Your dog has been sleeping at your feet all evening. Nothing unusual. But then it gets up, walks slowly to the corner of the room, lies down, and doesn't move. Not asleep, not playing. Just still. And something in your chest shifts. You don't know why. You just know. Animals do this too. They sense something. Something shifts in the air around dying, and scientists have spent decades trying to figure out exactly what that is. For most of human history, this kind of animal behavior was dismissed as superstition. A cat sitting with a dying person, a dog refusing to leave a grave, an elephant standing motionless over a body for hours. People called it projection. They said we were reading human emotion into animal behavior. But the data tells a different story. Let's start with one of the most documented cases in modern science. Oscar the cat lived in a dementia ward at Steer House Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Providence, Rhode Island. Oscar was not a friendly cat. He ignored most patients most of the time. But in 2007, a geriatrician named David Dosa published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine documenting something extraordinary. Oscar had correctly predicted the deaths of over 25 patients. He would enter a room, curl up beside a patient, and stay. Within hours, that patient was gone. Staff began using Oscar as a medical signal. When Oscar sat with someone, they called the family. How did he know? The leading hypothesis involves smell, specifically ketones. When the body begins shutting down, cells stop metabolizing glucose efficiently. They switch to burning fat. That process releases ketone compounds into the bloodstream, the breath, and eventually the skin. Oscar, like all cats, has an olfactory system roughly 14 times more sensitive than a human's. He wasn't predicting death. He was detecting it chemically, the way a doctor detects it with a blood panel. He was reading the body's final chemistry. But smell is only part of the picture. Elephants show something far more complex. A 2006 study by Karen McComb at the University of Sussex documented elephant responses to the skulls and bones of deceased herd members. Researchers placed elephant skulls, buffalo skulls, and rhino skulls in front of wild elephant families. The elephants were drawn repeatedly to the elephant skulls. They touched them with their trunks. They lingered. They returned over multiple days. They showed none of this behavior with the other skulls. They were not just detecting death. They were recognizing their own dead. This is not grief in the human sense, but it is something adjacent to it, a recognition, a response to the particular physical remnant of a member of your social group. Joyce Poole, one of the world's leading elephant researchers, has spent over 40 years in the field and documented what she calls death rituals. Elephants will stand vigil over a dying herd member for hours. They attempt to lift the body. They cover it with soil and branches. When a matriarch dies, her family may return to the site for years afterward. Poole has described watching a young elephant stay beside its dead mother for 3 days without food or water. It is not metaphor to say these animals understand that something irreversible has happened. But how early does this awareness begin? How deep in the animal kingdom does this recognition go? Further than most people expect. In 2013, a study by Gail Patricelli at the University of California, Davis observed house crows and western scrub jays holding what researchers informally called funerals. When a dead jay was placed in a suburban yard, nearby jays would gather loudly, dive bomb the body, call in alarm, and then go silent. They would avoid the area for days afterward. The behavior appeared to serve a function. It was a warning. Something dangerous had killed one of them. The gathering was reconnaissance. But the silence afterward suggested something the researchers couldn't fully explain. Mark Bekoff, a behavioral ecologist at the University of Colorado, has argued for decades that the emotional and cognitive lives of animals are far richer than mainstream science has been willing to admit. In his 2007 book, The Emotional Lives of Animals, he documented case after case of mourning, grief-adjacent behavior, and social responses to death across species. He was not arguing that animals feel death the way humans do. He was arguing something more interesting. That death, as a category, appears to have biological and social meaning across a vast range of species. Chimpanzees sit with dying members of their group. Mothers carry dead infants for days, sometimes weeks. A 2017 study published in Royal Society Open Science by Dora Biro at Oxford University examined chimp mothers in Bossou, Guinea, carrying their dead infants for up to 68 days. The mothers continued to groom them, to carry them, to protect them from insects. They were not confused about what had happened. Researchers believe this behavior may serve a gradual social function, a slow process of integrating the loss into the group's awareness. Dogs read you before you know something is wrong. This is not romantic projection. Your dog's nose contains roughly 300 million olfactory receptors. Yours contains about 6 million. Dogs have been trained to detect cancer, low blood sugar, and oncoming epileptic seizures with accuracy rates that rival clinical testing. A 2019 study at the Medical Detection Dogs Organization in the UK trained dogs to detect prostate cancer from urine samples with over 93% accuracy. They do this by reading molecular changes in the body long before those changes become visible symptoms. When your dog acts strange before you get sick, it is not a coincidence. It is chemistry. Your body has already begun changing, your dog already knows. There is a version of this that has been documented in wild animal populations for decades. Prey animals detect predator scent, but they also detect the scent of their own wounded or dead. A 2008 study on honeybees published in Current Biology found that dead bees release a specific fatty acid compound called oleic acid that triggers immediate removal behavior in the hive. Worker bees will carry the dead body out of the hive almost instantly after it releases this compound. Living bees coated experimentally with oleic acid were carried out of the hive and dropped outside while still alive. The hive detected death chemically and responded with complete social efficiency. Death at the biochemical level is not ambiguous. It has a signature. And living things have evolved to read that signature because survival depends on it. So here is the counterintuitive truth this leads to. Animals do not understand death the way philosophers define understanding. They do not contemplate mortality. They do not lie awake at 3 a.m. thinking about the end. But they detect it earlier, more accurately, and more instinctively than any human instrument developed before the 20th century. They have been reading the chemistry of dying for millions of years. What looks like mystical awareness is evolutionary expertise. Your ancient ancestors lived in close proximity to animals. They watched dogs sit with the sick. They watched birds go silent after a death. They watched elephants return to bones. And for a long time, they interpreted this as spiritual knowledge, a communion between the animal world and whatever came next. They were not entirely wrong. They were just missing the mechanism. Your body is already doing something right now that you cannot detect. Your cells are talking to each other in chemical signals that your conscious mind will never read directly. But somewhere nearby, an animal might be reading it just fine. You wake up and something feels off. You can't name it. You just know. That feeling is ancient. It is chemical. It is the same system that Oscar the cat used in a nursing home in Providence, Rhode Island, to sit beside 25 people in their final hours. Your instinct and his instinct come from the same deep evolutionary source. Death has a smell. Life learned to recognize it a very long time ago.